So before I start, I want to say I'm really freaking nervous about this because a lot of what I wanted to talk about and explore has already been covered this morning, at least explored and kind of touched on. So hopefully not too much of this will feel like repetition, and hopefully I can take it in a slightly different direction and draw some of those themes together. So I'm going to explore 5 things which keep me up at night, which concern me deeply, which make me fear for the future of my job and our jobs and the whole industry, possibly all of capitalism and possibly the end of the world. I'm going to go very, very fast because I have an inordinate amount of content to get through and only 30 minutes to do it in, so brace yourselves and strap in. The first thing that's really, really bothering me is that the gap between platforms and brands is getting wider. Let's explore what I mean. Most brands have websites that look something like this. This is an e-commerce example of America Online. They sell home goods. This site was designed, developed, and managed to allow consumers to do the thing. It's a transactional experience. I can go to this website, I can read content, I can click on buttons, I can add things to my cart, I can buy stuff. These are all singular tasks. This website exists to allow consumers to complete those tasks. What does that mean? If I'm not interested in a washing machine, there is no reason for me to visit this website of my own choice. I will never proactively choose to spend my downtime and my free hours browsing through America Online's catalogue of washing machines. I have no interest in their offering, their content, or their propositions. I am not currently going through or undertaking the task that their website is designed to allow me to fulfill. And going back to what Don was saying earlier about sites which kind of bolt on bits of architecture and evolve and get messier and messier and messier, because these websites are only one part of these business. So America Online has lots of moving parts. They have a business with warehouses and staff and shops. Because the website is just a marketing channel, it doesn't get a huge amount of love. And once upon a time, it might have started off as a simple thing, but then they bolted on a blog and they bolted on an app and they stitched up their analytics, and now it's a freaking mess. It's never going to be sleek. It's never going to be beautiful. It's never going to be somewhere where I'm going to go to and think, isn't it nice? Aren't I having a great time? Conversely, platforms are the opposite. The quality and experience delivered by a platform is their brand, is their business. Their user experience is what I go there for. Platforms are somewhere where consumers are and spend time rather than somewhere they go to do a thing. It's an important distinction because I will be comfortable and happy browsing my content and other people's content without necessarily having a goal in mind. And platforms are much sleeker. They're built API first. They take advantage of new technologies. They're built on React and Node and Angular and lots of shiny stuff. Why is that important? Because a division is forming. As platforms get faster and faster and better and nicer, and it's consistently a much better user experience to chill on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn or WhatsApp or wherever the millennials are at the moment versus websites. More and more people will prefer to spend time in those platforms. And as they get faster and better, their expectations of what good looks like will get higher. The best website experiences they have will become their expectations for the norm. What does that mean for you? It means your website is going to feel slower. It's going to feel uglier. It's going to feel worse because it won't remember you, personalize your content, be fast, be fluid, be sleek in a way that their platforms will, in a way that people like brands like Facebook have conditioned them to expect. Even if you're improving, even if you're the head of your game and you're ranking really well and you're getting loads of visits, your website is going to feel worse in comparison to the better experiences these consumers are having. Which is why we're becoming increasingly reliant on paid advertising. Because consumers won't want to visit your website, because they are comfortable in the environments they're in, on their apps, in their phones, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and wherever they are less and less likely of their own choice to go and look at your pictures of washing machines. So we spend money. We spend money with brands and platforms like Facebook and like AdWords. We exchange cash in exchange for renting eyeballs. We give the money to these platforms and we say, in exchange for however many dollars, can I borrow this person's attention? Can I get a click out of them? And we drag them out of that ecosystem. That's an imperfect model. It's full of friction. Consumers don't want to be advertised to. They don't want to be taken out of the nice place where they're spending time. I don't want to have to be interrupted and dragged out of the experience that I'm having. And platforms don't want those consumers to leave. As soon as the consumer clicks out to a third party in a website and goes and looks at washing machines, the platform has lost ownership of their eyeballs. They've lost ownership of their data. They've lost ownership of the ability for them to monetize and to keep ownership of them. That's why increasingly brands and platforms like Google are rolling out their own verticalized solutions. Things like Google Flights, shown this morning, where they want to keep you. It's not about them winning flights necessarily. It's about you not leaving their platform. That's really scary. Because when you start to explore and start to think about this relationship between platforms and brand websites, you start to realize that not only are we relying on paid advertising to rent eyeballs, also all the great SEO we're doing, all the content we're producing, all the wonderful campaigns that we're running are still just renting eyeballs. You're employing SEO staff, you're investing time and money in content. That is the same money that could have been buying AdWords clicks. We're just renting consumers' attention from platforms. Which is why all of the brands and all the platforms are looking for a better model, why we're looking for alternative ways to advertise, to market. We don't want banner adverts, we don't want to be dragged out of Facebook. The good news is that in the last couple of years, we've started to see a revolution where you can take your content and you can put it into the platforms for free. This is an age of distributed content. Many of you will recognize these logos. AMP is obviously contentious. I love AMP. But also Facebook Instant Articles and Apple News and various other flavors exist where I can take the content and the contents of my web pages and I can put it in situ within the platform. Whether that's Google's AMP cache or an inline article in Facebook or an Apple News article, these are faster. These are better looking, these are sleeker, they're not full of adverts, they're not full of your frustrating conversion messaging and pushing and pop-ups. This is a better user experience. And it's much harder for brands to sell and convert from that, but that's the brand's problem to solve because consumers are happier and have a better experience when they're not dragged out of platforms to your comparatively crappy website. What's happening is that brands are, whether they understand it or not, ceding control of what they've conventionally perceived of as their customers and their customer experiences in exchange for discoverability. I will adopt AMP. I will enable Facebook Instant Articles. I will put my content in Apple News. And I will sacrifice owning the consumer journey, whatever that's meant, in exchange for getting my content seen. That's a radical shift in thinking, and brands will need to understand that they can't use that to sell washing machines at the end of the funnel. They will need to think about how they engage people much earlier in their journeys in order to win hearts and minds. We'll come on to some of the practical implications of that, but the way that brands need to communicate with consumers will change as a result of this shift. This is essentially a revolution from an owned media model to a distributed content model, where we're not talking about some new marketing channels that you might want to consider. We're talking about a shift from a world where I put content on my website and attract visitors to it, to a world where my content lives out there, whatever that might mean. And what that means will change. Google Plus was retired yesterday. Nobody saw that coming, but none of these platforms are permanent. Some of them will live for years, some of them will live for weeks. We need to embrace a model where my content is consumed and encountered and acted on in a myriad of distributed places rather than on my website, because that's where consumers are. They are comfortable in the platforms and environments they're in, consuming content, consuming your competitors' content. They're not inspired, they're not motivated to leave those platforms and to go to your website. You need to reach them where they are. And this is just the beginning. This is day one. Today, there are 5 places where they are. It's LinkedIn, it's Facebook, it's WhatsApp, it's Twitter, it's WeChat. Tomorrow, there will be 10. The next day, there will be 100. And this move from websites and visitors to a fragmented ecosystem will get bigger and faster. And if you want to maintain your current world, where you attract people to your site and you force them to leave those platforms, and remember, Google itself is a platform. They're trying to fulfill users' intents. Hannah was talking about this increasingly, where they give you what you want in the search experience. Google will not want to send your website visitors. It's not in their interest to do so. They're not interested in your website. They don't care who wins. They care that the consumer gets the answer and they can monetize them. So what does your website offer that's distinctly and uniquely valuable enough that somebody will proactively, of their own choice, choose to type that URL in or search for your brand name directly and visit your website rather than getting whatever they want in the environments that they're in? It's a hard question to answer when our current paradigm is to build the biggest castle. All of us, day in, day out, we've been taught that success looks like having the biggest website with the most pages, with the most rankings, with the most visits, with the most conversions. That's what we're all trained to do. We're all focusing on growing inwards, but that approach does not work when nobody wants or needs to visit your website. You can't just keep building this thing and hoping that they'll come, because users don't want to come and platforms don't want to send them. That's yesterday's model. And even if you try and persist in this way of thinking, how on earth does your analytics and your attribution thinking work when people aren't in that market, when they never click on your site, when you can't model the conversion rate and the number of searches and the number of clicks and the click-through rate, because people never leave the platforms. They're not there. So you need to start to build your brand equity in other environments, in the places where they are. You need to have a reputation in WeChat. You need to be present in people's feeds in Facebook, whatever flavor that is. Now, conventional business logic says that that's terrible advice. All conventional business logic says don't build equity on rented platforms. There are so many horror stories of people who built family businesses on Facebook who then changed their algorithm and people lose their jobs and struggle to pay their mortgages and have starving children. Don't build equity on rented platforms because they change. You cede control. But what happens when rented platforms are all there are? When consumers don't want to leave platforms and platforms don't want them to leave, those are the places the consumers are and the only place you can reach them. You can only build equity in those rented platforms. I don't know what the answer is, but we should all start thinking about what that means to us. I think to approach this, we need a new marketing model. We need to consider what marketing is, and digital marketing in particular. And we need to change how we think about conversion and attraction and consumers. Specifically, I think we need to change the relationship between marketing and audience. That sounds incredibly vague, so here's a quote that I've invented that I'm sure I might have stolen from somebody. But the role of your content on your brand website needs to shift away from conversion and towards positively influencing brand preference and recall. At the moment, you have a website that solely exists and is solely designed to allow people who want a washing machine to buy a washing machine. What if you changed that and you changed it to encouraging people to think about the next time they're buying home appliances that they should be eco-friendly? You need to move higher up the funnel and tell stories which build brand preference. I am a very technical SEO. I am a coder, a developer, and a nerd, and all of this feels woolly. Naive even, to a generation of digital marketers who have prided themselves on being measurable and accountable and driving clicks and conversions. This feels soft, and I don't like it. But there's a reason why P&G are one of the biggest brands in the world, and you could replace them with Unilever or Johnson & Johnson or any of the other big players. These guys manufacture every home cleaning product you have ever seen or touched. Most of what you own in your bathroom is probably manufactured by them or one of their subsidiaries. Now, when you look at their websites, they look unsophisticated. Looks like they missed the digital revolution entirely. Because you can go to, I don't know, Lenore, who's like a fabric softener's website, and you cannot buy Lenore from Lenore's website. They don't have e-commerce functionality. What they have is pictures of happy families who are living enriched lives and telling stories about how wonderful it is that they're healthy and living great lives where they are happy to be a healthy, functioning family. Like all that sort of waffle. But their objective was never to sell Lenore on their website. They didn't get caught up in the digital marketing thing that we're all addicted to, where they went, how many visitors do we have? How many do we convert? How many dollars do we make? They said, we understand that when our audience goes to the supermarket, they will see 4 brands and they won't care about any of them, because who cares which fabric softener they get? But they'll recognize that logo from that content they saw and that story that we told. And despite trying to be sophisticated humans and convincing ourselves that we're rational, some deep part of their brain, for millions of years of evolution, will go, I recognize that logo, and it will generate an emotional response, and they will choose that one. All of P&G's operations, all of their website, all of their digital assets are designed to market for preference. And they make billions and billions of dollars, of pounds, of euros of revenue. They understand that they have to influence earlier. That they can't, by the time somebody says, I want a thing, it's too late to try and sell them that thing. Sure, you can make a bit of money from the 2% of people you convert, but you miss all the people who might have bought. You miss all the people who will make decisions that you can't influence. And this isn't just P&G. This is every large successful brand in the world that dominates our supermarkets, that dominates our lives and our homes and our offices. This is the reason they are successful, because they have understood that this is what good marketing looks like. They didn't get digital wrong. They understood that it was one small slice, and they continue to do what has always worked for them. They marketed for user preference. What if you thought about your distributed content strategy in a radically different way? Well, one of the main dislikes of AMP is that you go, oh, it damages conversion because I can't show all my pop-ups and my conversion messaging, etc. What if your objective of your distributed content, the content you put in Facebook, in WeChat, in WhatsApp, on AMP, and whatever, wasn't to try and sell? What if it was to get somebody to like you more, or to remember your logo, or to tell a compelling story, or to change somebody's mind? Those are the kinds of things we need to think about. And I will accept that those brands are yesterday's brands. And part of why they continue to be successful is they develop momentum in an earlier age in a simpler time, and they've got enough money that they can sit on it and keep rolling. I'll give you that. So if you're starting today, or if you've already got a brand that you want to get to that level of success, how do you do that in tomorrow's world? I'm really concerned that everything that we know and everything that we think and we believe about digital marketing is about to break fundamentally and comprehensively. I recently bought a new laptop, and this is the process I went through. I had a moment, it's Google terminology again, I had a micro moment where I thought, this one's getting a bit broken and I need a new one. I went through a process where I built a consideration set. I'm aware of some brands who manufacture laptops. I started off with an idea of which one I might buy. I reduced that through a process of research. I evaluated risk and pricing and some attributes, and then I chose and I purchased. Every strategy, every tactic, every tool, every decision, and every lever of influence we have assumes that I can interrupt that process. At some point, I will show you an ad. I will whack a display thing on the page. I will have a special offer. I will put a billboard outside the window. I will have written content that ranks highly in organic search, so that during these stages, I can change the path of your outcome. You can see an ad and you can go, no, that one's cheap. The process whereby I might have said I will look at these 3 brands, you can slide in, you can knock one out, you can change that behavior. That is everything that we do. Those are all the tools we have. That's how we work. That's what we're for. In a world of personal assistance, and where bots make decisions on my behalf by talking to other bots and reading data, all of these processes go away. All of the points where you might have shown me an advert, or you might have interrupted for my attention, or you might have had a special offer, if systems are making decisions on my behalf, using data they've got access to, talking to other bots, et cetera, reading my calendar, whatever else will come on some examples, I am not there. So that when I say, I need a new laptop, it evaluates all of that and says, here are some great options for you. Would you like one of these 3? And I say, maybe tell me more about the second one. All of the points where you might have interrupted have gone. All of the tools you might have used to buy or attract or rent my attention from a platform have gone. You cannot reach me as a consumer. How do you influence the choices people are making when they are not there? I don't know the answer, but I have some thoughts. Because outsourced ownership as a concept is already a thing. This is a site called Flipper, which automatically evaluates the gas and electricity market for my home and automatically changes my account when there's a better one. Now, this isn't AI, it's not machine learning, it's not smart or sophisticated, it's just a service. It's some people who monitor the market. But this is the beginning. What's interesting about this is now, as a consumer, if you're in the gas and electricity and home services market, you cannot reach me. I am not there. I will not go and Google and compare stuff and decide and have opinions. This system will decide for me based on a good fit. The next stage of this is that this is AI, and this is automatic, and it ties into my Google Calendar and my Facebook account and everything else. How do you buy my attention? You can't, because I'm not there. And it's not just commodity stuff. I do the same for my mortgage. This is Habito that runs in the UK. They automatically find me the best mortgage deal and switch me. I've exited 2 markets as a consumer. This is the beginning of a trend which we'll all start to see. Consumers will flee from these processes. It's so tedious going and comparing and shopping and buying. Why would I when these systems can do it for me? The funnel has never existed. It's been an oversimplification, but now even that oversimplification is dead. There is no funnel. There is no process where people nicely progress through a series of steps. They're not there. Now, to be clear, I'm going to double check my notes because I do not want to be misquoted on this. I'm not saying that personal assistants replace all research behavior. I'm not saying that as a consumer I won't have opinions or inputs where I might want to say, actually, if I'm getting a new laptop, it needs to have at least 2 USB ports, for example. And I'm not saying that you won't need to provide some of those inputs and parameters. What I am saying is that we all already exist in a filter bubble where systems choose what you don't see. It will be very rare for these systems to decide you should have this one and for me not to be involved. It is already common for these systems to decide what you don't see. Google Maps is increasingly not showing you restaurants which aren't open right now. Extrapolate from there. These systems will find bad fits and won't include them in the consideration set. And what is marketing if not papering over the cracks of bad fits? How many people have a brand that has a perfect product that's perfectly priced with perfect customer service? All the marketing we do is to make up for that fact, to make it look better than it is. If you are not a good fit, these systems will rule you out of the process. The consumer isn't there, and these systems will not include you in their recommendations. How do you market? What is marketing? This is already happening. The voice revolution is happening. It's still a little bit awkward and early, but this is the way that all behavior will change to be, and brands who aren't serviced will fail because they will never be shown to the consumer. Take a deep breath. Think about how scary that is. What do we do? I'm entering into a realm of pure speculation. This is the product of thoughts and dreams and drunk conversations I've had. I would love to be challenged and explore some of this in further depth. But I think systems like Google Home, like Alexa, like Siri, like Bixby, like any of the Cortana, if she's still a thing, will use 3 concepts to decide which brands they don't show you. I think they will assess availability. This is early, this is easy, it's being done now. They will look at, is this thing open? Is it nearby? Is it valid? Does it exist? Does it look like the right kind of shape? They will assess suitability. Is this good? Is it right? Does it align with your expectations of price? This is a slightly more sophisticated version of a Google Shopping. This is still fairly simple. I think what's really interesting is that it will assess implied preference. Does this thing look like it aligns with what I understand of your values? Not just is it the cheapest or is it the best, but is it right for you based on what I understand you want? What is implied preference, I hear you ask? Implied preference is the combination of past behavior and connected data. So when I say, find me some options for a laptop, my Google Home or my Alexa, whatever it is, can access my calendar, my email, my maps, my history, my friends, my Facebook comments, 1,000 other things, and it can juggle all of that up into a soup. Consider that all of that information is from the past. That information already has to exist. It already has to have happened. If I say, hey, Google, get me a pizza, it is evaluating information from the past to decide whether it should use Domino's or Papa John's or Pizza Hut. That means those brands need to have marketed to me in the past. Papa John's already needs to have had me install an app and like a Facebook post and read an article and be friends with other people who like it. Because if they wait until the moment where I say, get me a pizza, it is too late to create that data. You have to market before the customer expresses a need. Otherwise, the systems won't have data to use to include you. What's that look like? In 2016, I read a really interesting article about graphics cards and visual machine learning. In 2017, I retweeted a clever joke about Moore's Law. 2018, I started thinking about buying a new laptop, and these systems understood. And they used that to infer which brands I might or might not be interested in. If they hadn't been there, if they hadn't been involved in that process, how would they know? How would these systems understand? I think there are some really easy things they can do. They can look at direct actions. They can monitor things like read an article, liked or shared a post. This is fairly easy stuff to do now. But laptops are an infrequent purchase, and it's an interesting example, but I don't buy a new laptop very often. Not many people do. So the amount of data you can get on my laptop purchasing data is pretty low. So let's look at network actions. When did Dom last buy a laptop? Hi. What did he do? What does he like? All the people I'm connected to, who influence me, who I'm connected to, who I have relationships with, what do they like? What do they do, etc. We can maybe start to infer, but even then it's still a pretty rare purchase. There's not enough information to inform a decision. So let's look at lookalike actions. Let's assess the behavior and characteristics of people who look like me. Who's from the paid world who dabbles with lookalike audiences? Everyone know what lookalike? So lookalike audiences, this is a ginger tech nerd. This is a woman drinking red wine. Somewhere in that Venn diagram is me. And probably millions of other people. When you start to understand that, you can start to say, well, maybe when I say I need a new laptop, the system can go, well, Jono doesn't buy laptops very often, and I don't know much about his explicit preferences. I do know he doesn't want a Mac because he tweeted something acerbic about Steve Jobs recently, and we should rule that out as an option. I don't want to ask him a series of questions. Like, nobody will use voice if it's a series of 20 questions where I've got to get interrogated over my preferences. It should be able to guess and get it right enough that it's a refinement process. But here are a bunch of people who have similar hobbies, similar job titles, similar tastes in music, because we're talking about machine learning patterns which will find information and correlation where humans wouldn't think to look for it. And it can make a recommendation based on the properties of people who look like me. all your organic marketing and all your SEO needs to start to market towards people who look like people who might buy from you in the future. I'm appropriating a term. I want to call this brand currency. We need a way of considering this and measuring it and monitoring it. I think that brand currency is a score between a brand and a consumer that's affected by your interactions. And the really nice thing about brand currency is if you get enough of it, you bypass this process entirely. You skip the queue. You go, there is so much evidence and data that I love Dell. I'm not massively fussed about Dell, but I love Dell. You just go, it should definitely be a Dell. You rig that score so hard through top of the funnel marketing and great storytelling and branding that it's obvious that that's my preferred option. And then you turn up every time in the consideration set. How do you earn currency? I think there is a hierarchy. Again, this is just made-up waffle, so please feel free to disregard it or challenge it. I think every interaction you have with a brand sits at one of these levels. At the most basic level, they fulfill the thing. They meet the requirement. It's okay, it exists, it wasn't a bad experience. That is 99% of the interactions you have with most brands. You ask for the burger, they give you the burger's fine. It's unremarkable. It doesn't create any brand currency. It doesn't mean that the next time you want a burger, they will have any particular weighting or influence. Storytelling, however, gives you messages or elements of the service which surprise or delight. I ask for the burger and it's incredible. And they have a great story about how it's local and organic, yada, 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 yada. And that generates data points because I tweet, I engage, I review, and that creates signals not just for me next time I get a burger, but for people who look like me, people who travel a lot and wear brown shoes or whatever else it is. You start to create data and signals that influence your likelihood to be in a consideration set. And the best type of interactions give an experience, where something is so meaningful and so profound and so deep that it answers to part of your human existence. A deep emotional connection. Let's give you some examples. There is a shop at the end of my street that occasionally repairs my bike. I have no relationship with them. I'm not interested. If they went out of business or got a changed name, I wouldn't even notice. They're not a significant part of my experience. Tesco, the supermarket, puts things I need on shelves. Uninteresting. I have no emotional connection. Fitbit makes me feel like I'm in control of my health. That's a story, but it's also a story about my relationship with the brand. Not the product, but the brand. That's an interesting distinction. Amazon's retail arm has everything I will ever need without friction in a very reliable way, in a way that is pleasingly reliable to such a point that I will proactively use it every time. Uber, despite being demonstrably evil, generates huge amounts of brand currency with me because they have removed my fear of the unknown. The taxis are convenient, cheap, etc. But what they've really achieved is when I step out of a car at an airport somewhere I've never been and I'm not sure how to pronounce the name of my hotel, all of that uncertainty is gone. They have made me safe. That generates huge amounts of brand currency. It means that when I say, hey Alexa, get me a taxi, they win the game every time. Amazon Prime means I already have everything I need and everything I want. I just need to click a button. That's an enormously powerful proposition. I accept this is all a bit woolly. Let's get technical. I think I built a model. I think you have to do brand marketing, i.e. nice storytelling, the kind of Lenore, happy family, aren't we safe, aren't we good, at the top of the funnel, in distributed environments, in a meaningful way, not just trying to sell stuff. That gives you an opportunity to deliver an experience. That experience might lead to direct interactions with your brand and product and might lead to sales. Woo! But it also creates network interactions where you create data points that change the way that other people behave and which systems include which brands, and you create lookalike interactions. That gives you an opportunity to generate brand currency. Brand currency, enough of it, earns you direct preference, earns you implied preference, and earns you lookalike preference, which gives you an opportunity to be present in a consideration set, which in turn means you can then do more brand marketing. You do this the other way, and you fail to be included at each step. You fail to do brand marketing, you're never included in the consideration set. You fail to deliver a brand experience, you don't earn the brand currency, which gets you included at the next stage. This is how all marketing should work. There's a nice write-up of this by a guy called Salmon Swan, who's turned this into words rather than me flapping my arms. You should go read it. Here's a really scary thought for all of us, because all brand interactions, therefore, by everyone, everywhere, any point in time, affect all brand currency through time. Everyone who has any interaction with your brand will influence what happens to everybody else and their interactions with your brand. If I have a bad experience getting a burger, It doesn't matter that I won't go there again. It means that people who look like me are less likely to be recommended that place. That's really scary because it means that all of our current thinking where we say, here are the people who might ever feasibly buy from us and where we should spend our marketing, expands out to people who might ever feasibly touch our brand and we need to worry about them, which expands out to everyone everywhere, which is where we should spend all of our marketing budget. Because if one of those people has a bad experience or doesn't have a good experience, that will influence your likelihood to reach these people. That means our job looks more like this. I don't know what the answer is. And this sounds crazy and insane and overwhelming, but this is how all of these brands behave. This is how they've always behaved, and it's why they are winning. It's why they are huge. They have always understood that you have to market for preference and reputation to everybody, every day in everything that you do. And it doesn't matter that your Lenore shop doesn't have an e-commerce button, because they're winning on preference and reputation and recall. I think this is what all modern marketing should look like. I think that digital is a distraction. We've got some nice shiny toys and we mistook that for the universe. Digital is the technique and the tactic and the toolkit. It's not a thing in its own right. Controversial. So what's next? What do we do in 10 seconds or less? I don't know. I think we talk about this, because I think we might be missing the point and other people might be eating our lunch. If we don't get this right, as my Google Home increasingly decides that all the brands that we're working to market to pretend they're not a bad fit stop showing up, we might be too late to fix that. I do know that this is radical and it's challenging and it may be nonsense, so I would love to talk to you about it and explore some thoughts. I know that early adopters to this kind of thinking will win because they are already winning and have always been winning. They have won. I know that current models will fail. If you keep trying to measure search volumes and attract visitors to your website and try and convert 2% of them, and that's all you do, your market will diminish, your audience will encounter your competitors' content in the nice, cozy environments and platforms they're in. They will win hearts and minds, and you will not show up. Google will not want you to show up. Why would they allow you to show up when your experience isn't as good? Why? I do know that brand is everything, and that's incredibly fluffy and hard for me to admit as a technical SEO, but think about that, that's really scary. Practically, familiarize yourselves with the technologies that are changing the web. This will determine your capabilities to adapt to this way of thinking and behaving. The JavaScript, the React, the nodes, the server-side rendering, the page speed, the mobile-first indexing, all of this you have to understand, and it has to be part of your job. You have to get this right to buy entry to the next level. Consider how all of this is changing what consumers expect. As Facebook gets better, in theory, as LinkedIn gets better, as Twitter gets better, as people spend more and more time transacting in chats on WeChat, their expectations will raise. Your website has to raise, your ecosystem, whatever that is, wherever it is, however distributed it is, has to raise with that. They will also not wish to be sold to in WeChat or WhatsApp or Twitter. Prepare for a world where what our job becomes is influencing inferred preference. How do I do marketing that makes systems think that people like me? And that's not radically different from just doing good marketing, but you have to work out how you create data points and get people to click things and like things and interact. Finally, start to optimize for experiences which deliver a brand promise. Earn that brand currency. Do things which generate meaningful outcomes. And then summing, profit, good luck, go out and win like a rainbow and unicorn kitten. Thank you very much.